review/retrospect of The Dark Knight. A video that has been long in the making and long in the planning, actually. Something that I was really not sure if I was going to be able to do this, but after certain people asked me to do it, I thought, you know what? The hell with it. I'm going to talk about The Dark Knight. I don't care. What can I say about The Dark Knight that hasn't already been said? I've said that about a few movies on my channel, but this one in particular, I am probably going to have a hard time bringing up something original, but you know what? I'm going to do my best. And maybe to provide some of my experiences watching this movie over the last 10 years, since recently it was the 10th anniversary of The Dark Knight, which is hard to believe. When a movie is this popular, and so many people have quoted it, analyzed it, discussed it, said it's overrated, said it's underrated, I feel like it's all been said by now, but you know what? I'm going to give you my thoughts on it regardless, and hopefully I can provide an original experience for you, because this movie, it's one of a kind. I'm going to say it. It is one of a kind. There are certain movies out there, like Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Empire Strikes Back, The Shining, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Some of those I haven't seen, but I know how much of an impact that they've had on some people. This ranks as one of them, as a modern classic. And I know that some of you aren't really a big fan of The Dark Knight, and that's all well and good, because I recognize this isn't for everyone. This is not everybody's Batman. But you know what? I love it. Hopefully my viewpoint can make you guys understand. I feel like a little weirdo that I have to explain how I feel, but whatever. Let's talk about The Dark Knight. To start off with The Dark Knight, back in 2007 or 2006 when I got into Batman Begins, then I heard that they were making a sequel. This was one of the first times where I was actively following the marketing and the promotion and the production of an upcoming movie that I was extremely anticipating. From Heath Ledger's casting to the story, characters, and I spent so many months looking for any kind of clue as to what the Joker was going to look like. And from the trailers, and unfortunately to Heath Ledger's passing in January of 2008, the road of anticipation and hype leading up to The Dark Knight was something that I'll never ever forget. It was one of the most memorable experiences of my life. July 2008 is when this came out. I was 18 years old when this came out. In case any of you were wondering how old I am, I just turned 28 recently. And I saw it twice in the theater. First time with my grandfather and the second time with my mom. And when it came out on DVD and I later picked it up on Blu-ray, over the last 10 years I've watched it multiple times. And every time I watch it, it just somehow improves over the previous viewing, or there's something else that sticks out to me that makes me go, whoa, I didn't even notice that. Just like with a lot of movies out there, every time you watch it, you find something new to appreciate about it, or it's just more enthralling than the last time you see it. And the impact that this movie has had in the last decade, from Heath Ledger's performance to the iconic lines that have been quoted, "Let's put a smile on that face, some people want to watch the world burn," or "Why so serious?" It's hard to put into words, really. But let's get into The Dark Knight with spoilers in case you guys haven't seen this by now, which, do I really need to put a spoiler warning? Go see it if you haven't already. So the movie opens up in the famous bank heist sequence where these group of masked criminals in clown masks are robbing the Gotham City Bank. And it's a slow build, which people have talked about that it's very reminiscent of Michael Mann's film Heat from the 1990s. Most of them, except for this one robber, are talking about the Joker and what his deal is and how he wears makeup and how he organized this whole robbery in the first place, and how one of them starts to kill the other off, except for one guy who gets killed by the bank manager, played by William Fichtner. And this one Robert is not saying a word. He's just carrying on about his business, doing his thing, but while all the other guys are talking and jabbering around, scaring the hostages and whatnot. Obviously, we don't want you to do anything with your hands other than holding on for dear life. Do you have any idea who you're stealing from? You and your friends are dead! And it's at that moment when the bank manager comes out with his shotgun and the two robbers are hiding behind a counter. One of them pops out trying to take a shot at the manager, and he gets clipped in the shoulder, and the one robber who hasn't said a word comes out with his pistol and shoots him and wounds him. And the way the camera zooms in on him closely.
Where did you learn to count?
The Joker. That's the Joker. And eventually that guy gets killed by the bus driver who drives a bus into the bank. And then the Joker kills that guy. And then comes the reveal of the Joker underneath the mask.
What do you believe in, huh? What do you believe in?
I believe whatever doesn't kill you simply makes you stranger.
I still remember the first time I saw this, when he pulls off that mask and the music goes, I literally shuddered and went, And then after that, for about 15 minutes or so, you don't see the Joker. You mostly see Batman trying to deal with the mob and the inner workings of the police department and the DA's office, trying to figure out how they're going to clean up the streets of Gotham. But even though you want to see the Joker, it's still actually a really well-told story. And Nolan and the writers, I think his brother Jonathan Nolan wrote the screenplay as well. They do a really good job of showing the inner workings of the criminal justice system in the city and how things are looking up for Gotham, and how Batman has managed to inspire some people to take a stand against the criminals who took over the city, and they want to take back what's rightfully theirs. This is something that I've heard people complain about over the years, like, what is this, a cop show? Where are the supervillains? Well, realistically speaking at this point, not to steal from Jeremy Jahns, but you don't clean up Gotham City by taking out the supervillains, you take out the mobsters. They're the ones who run the show. Guys like Sal Maroni, who took over for Carmine Falcone when he was locked up in Arkham Asylum in the previous film. He's put on trial and is almost convicted until the guy who's testifying against him says, "You win, counselor. It was me. I have a sworn statement from you that this man, Salvatore Maroni, is the new head of the Falcone crime family." Maroni? He's a fall guy. I'm the brains of the organization. Permission to treat the witness as hostile? Granted.
Hostile? I see you hostile.
You want to kill a public servant, Mr. Maroni? I recommend you buy American. Now, obviously, I'm going to talk about Heath Ledger's performance, which, you know, it has to be talked about in a review. You can't ignore Heath Ledger, but because of Heath Ledger as the Joker, there's so many other characters in here that get overlooked, unfortunately. And I get that everybody loves the Joker, we all want to see him, but there's other characters in here, like the main character, Batman, or Harvey Dent, Commissioner Gordon, and Alfred, and Lucius Fox, and all those guys. Every character in this movie gets their moment to shine. Aaron Eckhart has Harvey Dent. Perfect. He is a great Harvey Dent, and great Two-Face as well. And if you know Harvey Dent in the comics, he becomes Two-Face with a certain accident that happens to him in a courtroom. Now, it's different in this movie, but they still do it in a way where it feels very unique and very faithful to the character. He's someone whose ideals that you understand. He wants to clean up Gotham. He's inspired by Batman's actions, but he wants to do it in a more legal spectrum. Batman works outside the law, Harvey works within the confines of the law, and Batman sees him as a potential successor to take over his mantle. And Harvey expresses, whoever Batman is, he doesn't want to do this for the rest of his life. He's looking for someone to take up his mantle, which is something that Bruce Wayne makes clear throughout the entire film, that he wants Gotham's hero to be someone who doesn't wear a mask, even though he later ends up becoming the hero that they deserve in The Dark Knight Rises. At this point, to him, it makes more sense for Harvey to be that hero. And Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne, still, I mean, I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again, but in case you guys don't know, I still think Christian Bale is the best on-screen Batman that we've ever seen. Call me crazy, call me stupid, call me nostalgic, but I love Christian Bale. Bruce Wayne, perfect. Batman, look, you can make fun of the voice forever, I don't care, but I like the voice. I do. And of course, there's the whole line where he says,
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
Every time I've watched it, I burst out laughing. Yes, it's funny, I can joke about it, but I personally don't have a problem with the voice. I think it works. Christian Bale, I think, does a really good job of making Bruce Wayne a very heartwarming and sympathetic character, because usually in other iterations he's portrayed to be very cynical and very emotionally cold, like a strong silent type of character, and someone who doesn't have the greatest sense of humor. He doesn't really get jokes that often. This one, as I've said before in other videos, he portrays him to be more of a normal guy. He still has some of those qualities, that dark and brooding nature and the false facades that he puts on in public, but when you get to him in private, he actually portrays him as a more normal guy. And I like that, because some people might see that as a unfaithful performance of the character, but I think it makes him a pretty damn accurate representation of what a real-life Bruce Wayne would be like. And I might talk about this quite often in this review, but the interactions that he has with Alfred and Mr. Fox, it's some of the best moments in this trilogy, because it provides that needed humor that you want in this trilogy with a character that has a dark nature to him like Batman. Heath Ledger, of course, gives that humor, but it really helps when you have a couple of snarky lines going back and forth between two characters. More copycats last night, Alfred with guns. Why don't you hire them and take the weekend off? I need a new suit. Well, 3 buttons is a little 90s, Mr. Wayne. I'm not talking fashion, Mr. Fox, so much as function. Sonar. Just like a submarine, Mr. Wayne. Like a submarine. And after about 15 minutes, the Gotham Police Department decides to raid certain banks that are controlled by the Mafia. And with the help of a certain Mr. Lau, who Bruce Wayne's company was doing business with, but then he decides to cut off the deal. He is an accountant for all these mobsters in the city, and he takes all their money to a safe location in Hong Kong, since China will not extradite a national under any circumstances. And they're talking to him through this TV in this kitchen that they're in, talking about what's going on, and they show Captain Gordon and his team raiding the bank, coming up short-handed, and Gordon is obviously upset about this. And I'm sure Harvey Dent is not liking it. But then, in comes the Joker, which I swear to you, to this day, when I first saw this on opening day, when you hear him go, and that slow violin note starts to play, I started to tense up and go like this. Oh my God, we're about to see it. And I'm just sitting there, just in awe, because he has such a commanding presence to him as the Joker. This whole introduction, I'm really having a hard time describing certain things, because A, it's already been said, and B, it's indescribable, but hey, we're gonna go with it anyway. And then the pencil trick happens. When he slams the pencil into the table and goes, I'm gonna make this pencil disappear. At first I go, what? He grabs a guy by the head and he slams his eye right into the pencil. People in the theater were laughing. This is how I reacted.
It's gone.
At that point, any doubts that I had about Heath Ledger were fully gone. Because when he was first announced back in 2007 or something like that, I was actually excited to see him as the Joker. And I'm sure a lot of you know, a lot of people were not excited about this. They all thought, the guy from Brokeback Mountain and 10 Things I Hate About You? Pfft, right, like that's gonna work. I wasn't following movie news on the internet like we have today, like with the Schmoes and Jeremy and Screen Junkies and all that. But I was excited to see what he could bring to the character. I thought, that'd be cool. I'd like to see what he does with the Joker. And then when they revealed this picture in a promotional still, I thought, what? No, that's not the Joker. Because I was expecting more of like a classic comic book Joker kind of look. But I didn't take into account at that time they were trying to go for a more realistic approach with how the Joker would be in the real world. But when this trailer came out and you saw this,
A little fight in you. I like that.
that's where I went, never mind. I was still holding my breath until the movie came out, just in case I might have been wrong, but when that opening scene happened where he reveals himself by pulling off the mask, and when he slams that guy's head into the pencil, I knew right then and there that he was the perfect choice. Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker. It's one of a kind. There's no other way to describe it. He is the perfect live-action Joker they could have ever gotten. I love Mark Hamill's Joker as a voiceover. I think he's perfect for that one, but for live action, it's Heath Ledger for me. There will never be another Joker like him. Ever. And I don't see how anybody else can follow in his footsteps. And I like how he manages to put his foot down with the mobsters, saying like, look guys, a year ago, you guys were on top of the world, but with Batman in the picture and Harvey Dent showing up, this is only the beginning of your downfall. These cops and lawyers wouldn't dare cross any of you. I mean, what happened? Did your balls drop off? And as for the television's so-called plan, Batman has no jurisdiction. He'll find him and make him squeal. I know the squealers when I see them. And I'm probably going to be doing that a lot in this video, but I can't help it. His line delivery, oh my God, it's irresistible. And he wants half of their $64 million that they have stashed away. And a lot of the mobsters are like, dude, come on. What are you capable of? You're nothing. You're just a guy in clown makeup. What are you gonna do? But the Russian, played by Richie Kosti, I don't know the actor's name, he takes more of a liking to Joker at first because of the money. Gamble, played by Michael Jai White, is that how you say his name? You can correct me either way. He doesn't like the idea that the Joker's poking his nose around in their business, so he puts a bounty on the guy's head. 500 grand for this clown dead, 1 million alive, so I can teach him some manners first. And the Joker doesn't like that, so he decides to take Gamble out of the picture by killing him and his cronies. With the famous scene of, you wanna know how I got these scars? And he tells the story about how his father was a very abusive drunk, and one night he came home crazier than usual, and his mother took a kitchen knife out to defend herself, and he took the knife from her and killed her with it. And then he turns to him and goes,
Why so serious?
let's put a smile on that face. From the moment he popped up from that pool table and stuck the knife into Gamble's mouth, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time until he killed him. And when he pulls the blade just a little bit inside of his mouth, I went, And the whole story is like, okay, that's kind of a forced story of how you got your scars, but whatever. But I could see that the Joker might have had a troubled childhood in some way. Meanwhile, in China, Mr. Lau is hiding out in Hong Kong with his company. Bruce Wayne and Lucius decide to go over and tell them that the deal's been canceled. Well, Lucius tells him that anyway, and leaves a cell phone in the lobby, a cloned phone, which will be later used for Batman's plan to extract Mr. Lau from his office. And as Batman, he manages to fly into Lau's office and fights off his thugs and gets him on a secret plane back to the United States, to Gotham City. Which the action in here and the visuals, some of the best that the movie has to offer. From Batman standing on the ledge of that tower, taking a huge dive down the building and then opening his cape and flying over the city. Some of the best imagery for Batman you could ever have. And the action, I think, is a big improvement over the previous film, Batman Begins, because the camera work was a little shaky in some cases, like a quick cut kind of thing, similar to Bourne Identity, and I think it's because Nolan at that point was still not quite used to filming action scenes, and at this point he was getting better and better. And I think in recent years with movies like Dunkirk he's improved, but that was a war movie. In the trilogy, they portray the fights in a more realistic manner. I keep saying this is a more realistic take for the characters. This is not going to look like the Batman Arkham games, it's not going to look like a comic book. Fights in real life do not look like the warehouse scene in Batman v Superman. It's just not going to happen. People who say that the fights look terrible, you've never seen a fight in real life apparently, because it doesn't work like that. So Lau's brought back to Gotham City and he decides to make a deal with the DA's office by giving up all of his clients in exchange for immunity, protection, and a charter plane back to Hong Kong. I'm good with calculation. I handled all the investments. One big pot. And with his testimony, the Gotham Police Department make all these numerous arrests across the city by arresting the mob bosses and their cronies, giving them an ample opportunity to clean up the streets within like a couple years or so. Well, even if you blow enough smoke to get convictions out of Cirillo, you're going to set a new record of appeals for our quickest kick in the ass. And at that point, the mob decides in an act of desperation to bring the Joker into play and to fight back against the DA, the police, and Batman. Speaking of which, there's this scene where the dead body of a Batman copycat shows up.
Followed swiftly by you and me.
Makes me jump every time because it's so like random, like, oh my god! And I really wish there was a Weird Al parody of Eminem's song, Will the Real Slim Shady Please Stand Up? Will the real Batman please stand up? Please stand up? Please stand up? It's random. And the Joker publicly announces to Gotham his ultimatum. Batman does not reveal his identity to the public and turn himself in. He's gonna kill people every day until he does so. Which he does in this handheld camera scene, broadcasted to the entire city on the Gotham TV stations, with this poor guy who is a copycat for Batman. Heath Ledger's recording himself on this camera, and the way he ends that recording with his laugh.
I'm a man of my word.
I get shivers all over my body. I mean, it's not the iconic Joker laugh that Mark Hamill is known for, which is a great laugh, but Heath Ledger's laugh. Whoa. And later that night, Bruce has a party, a fundraiser for Harvey Dent, which he shows up with Rachel, and Harvey's feeling very uncomfortable since there's a lot of rich socialites walking around. Alfred shows up and says, "Little liquid courage, Mr. Dent?" You're Alfred, right? That's right, sir. Any psychotic ex-boyfriends I should be aware of? Oh, you have no idea. And Bruce Wayne shows up in a helicopter with two women on his arms, decides to give an open toast to Harvey Dent.
I believe in Harvey Dent. Yeah, nice slogan, Harvey.
I swear to God, that look he has on his face reminds me of a friend of mine who's just about as big of a Batman guy as I am, and that face, oh my... I literally almost broke. It looks exactly like him. I swear to you it's true. But I really like this scene, because even though he puts on that playboy persona, for a moment you can actually see the real Bruce Wayne starting to come out. It's very subtle, but you can see the genuineness of his intentions and wanting Harvey to be Gotham's White Knight and Gotham's true hero. Probably some of the best acting that Christian Bale's ever done as Batman, and even as an actor in general. Because he's not over the top about it. He's not all, look at me, I'm an actor, I'm so great. He's very careful and very subtle with his portrayal. And because of this speech, Rachel doesn't like that too much. At this point, she's growing really tired of Bruce Wayne getting so sucked into being Batman, which, let's talk about her for a second. A lot of people prefer Maggie Gyllenhaal as Rachel. I was like that for the first few years because at first I didn't really like Katie Holmes that much as Rachel. Looking back on it now, I'm not a huge fan of Rachel in this movie. I think she's a bit too shallow and a bit too... You know how people hate Mary Jane in Spider-Man 2 for being so harsh on Peter? I kind of see a similar problem with Rachel in this one. It's like she automatically is like a different character of sorts. Like she doesn't really sympathize that much with Bruce's situation. I mean, I understand why she feels the way she does, but to me, it's just a little too harsh. And I feel like maybe she should have been like, Bruce, come on, I know you better than that. And now I like Maggie Gyllenhaal. I think she's a very good actress. I've seen her in other things, and she's really good. And she's pretty good here, but to be honest, Katie Holmes feels more like Rachel to me. Yeah, I said it. You wanna come at me with that? You go right ahead. So yeah, Katie Holmes over Maggie Gyllenhaal for Rachel Dawes. I think she felt more like Rachel. And then later, during a private conversation that Harvey has with Rachel, he subtly but surely proposes to Rachel, asking her to marry him. And when he asks her, "What's your answer?" she stops and goes, "I don't have an answer." Because you can clearly tell that she is crazy about Harvey, but at the same time, she's still in love with Bruce. She's not really sure if she wants to take a chance with Harvey, or if she wants to stay true to her word and be with Bruce, because he tells her, "That day you once told me about when Gotham no longer needs Batman, it's coming." And it plays into the whole duality of man ideals that is presented throughout this film. Each character in a way is conflicted with what they want to do versus what they're tempted to do because of what the Joker's setting up out there. Batman wants to move on from being Batman, but he also doesn't really know if he wants to discontinue his crusade. And Harvey's dark side is later brought out when he becomes Two-Face, but we'll talk about that later. Meanwhile, Gordon and his team discovered 3 sets of DNA on the dead body that they discovered, belonging to Harvey, Judge Cirillo, and Commissioner Loeb. So they send different teams out to find them, but they're too late. Commissioner Loeb has a drink of wine, which Joker slipped in a set of poison and kills him. Judge Cirillo has a car bomb in her car, and it blows up when she opens an envelope. Detective Wirtz, who you might recognize as the one cop from The Fugitive with Harrison Ford, shows up with the Joker and his crew, and they storm the party looking for Harvey. And Bruce Wayne chokes him unconscious and hides him in a closet to protect him. The Joker's walking around demanding where Harvey Dent is, and then he later finds Rachel, and he gives another story about how he got his scars. Because at first he says, "Is it the scars? You want to know how I got them?" And then, instead of telling the same story that he told Gamble earlier, he tells a story about how he had a wife who was very depressed and who had a bunch of dealings with loan sharks and mobsters, got her face cut up because she didn't pay back certain money, and he cut up his own face with a razor to try to make her feel better, and she left him. And when he starts telling that story, it makes you go, what? But that's the thing. It's a perfect portrayal of the Joker because he doesn't even remember what happened to him. And I think he famously says in one comic, if I'm going to have a past story, I might as well have it be multiple choice. Something happened to him that's so tragic it made him lose his mind to the point where he couldn't even remember who he was before he became the Joker. It's perfect. It's all bullshit. That's great. So Batman shows up, breaks up the party, saves Rachel when the Joker drops her out the window, and later on, Bruce is in his own little Batcave trying to figure out what his next move is against the Joker, feeling that the mob has crossed the line, having the Joker come in and taking over, and Alfred says, "Sir, you crossed the line first. You squeezed them, you hammered them to the point of desperation." And in their desperation, they turn to a man they don't fully understand. And it's a thing that's common in the Batman lore, is that Batman means well and he wants to do what's right for the city, but because of his extreme actions, and because of his antics, it brings out some of the worst in Gotham City, and it's also like, this kind of is his fault. Not that he intended for any of this to happen, but things have gotten worse because of some of the extreme methods that he's been taking in order to put a stop to the crime in Gotham, which is why Batman isn't the most popular guy in Gotham all the time. Even though there are people in the city who still look at him as a hero, there are people out there, like certain cops, when certain cops start getting killed by the Joker, they start demanding that Batman turns himself in. And there's certain people like Mike Engel from Gotham Tonight, played by Anthony Michael Hall, who you might know as the nerd from The Breakfast Club or from 16 Candles, sees Batman as a vigilante who should answer for his crimes. And in that same scene, where Batman's trying to figure out what the Joker's really up to and what his intentions are, Alfred responds by telling a story of how he was serving in Burma many years ago in World War II and was trying to find a bandit who was throwing away all these stones and rubies, throwing them away just for the sport of it. And as he famously says,
Some men just want to watch the world burn.
the Joker does have an intention for what he's doing, but it's not in the way that Bruce Wayne is used to. Ra's al Ghul taught him criminals are not complicated. But this guy, he is complicated. It's just in his evil nature. He just wants to destroy something beautiful. And another thing that I hear people complain about is that Christian Bale's not exactly a detective in this series. I explained it in my Dark Knight Rises review last year, but this movie I think has the perfect illustration of how his detective skills are shown, when he's trying to discover a fingerprint on a bullet at a certain crime scene where 2 cops were killed. But they're examining the bullet in their underground bunker with a certain machine gun that fires a couple of rounds in these bricks, and he's analyzing it, and he takes it to Lucius Fox, and they manage to find a fingerprint on the bullet. If that doesn't tell you that Bruce Wayne is a detective, I don't know what is. And I've talked about that other scene in The Dark Knight Rises, how he managed to deduce Selina Kyle's identity. You're not going to see something visually big like something like in the Arkham games. I would love to see that kind of stuff, but in a realistic standpoint, I highly doubt that's going to happen. To me, I think it's pretty clear that he is a detective. Not a super smart detective, because detectives can't figure everything out on their own. They need the help of other people by bouncing ideas off of one another, and then they're able to come to certain conclusions and figure out who did what. By the way, two little things here. One, this shot here of Batman standing on the top of the Sears Tower, listening to radio chatter for the Joker's voice. Favorite shot in the entire movie. And Christian Bale actually stood on the ledge of that building with his feet strapped to the ledge, so that way he wouldn't fall off, but they wanted to make it look as real as they could. I could not do that. I would have been too scared. And another thing, one of the victims' names in that scene where Gordon says Richard Dent, Patrick Harvey, Richard Dent is the name of a Chicago Bears defensive player from 1986 when the Chicago Bears won their only Super Bowl. Richard Dent, for the Bears, was their MVP, and since The Dark Knight was filmed in Chicago for Gotham City, I was looking up past Super Bowl wins not too long ago, and I saw the name Richard Dent for Chicago Bears MVP, and I remembered the name from The Dark Knight, and I went, oh, was that intentional? I don't know if it was, but either way, I still thought it was a nice little connection. But Batman discovers that the mayor is the Joker's next target, and in the daytime, during Commissioner Loeb's funeral procession, Bruce Wayne goes out in public riding on his motorcycle, looks to a certain apartment that they managed to find through the fingerprint analysis, and he discovers a group of guys tied together against a support column, blindfolded, and their mouths covered with tape, and through them he discovers that they're cops, part of the honor guard, that fire the rifles in a 21 gun salute. He goes to take a look, and there's a sniper rifle that's supposed to give off the impression that there's a sniper about to shoot the mayor. But then as the camera's moving along the honor guard, you know that something's up. And then you see the Joker without his makeup. And he takes a shot at the mayor, but Gordon sees him, and he jumps in front of the mayor and takes the bullet. And the Joker manages to get away in all the chaos, except for one guy named Thomas Schiff who gets caught by the cops. And Harvey discovers on Thomas Schiff's name tag Rachel Dawes' name, who's the Joker's next target. And after Batman is blamed for Gordon's death by Gordon's wife, Barbara, he decides to go to Sal Maroni to try to figure out what the Joker's up to. But Maroni refuses to talk. From one professional to another. If you're trying to scare somebody, pick a better spot.
From this height, foe wouldn't kill me.
I'm counting on it.
So Harvey interrogates Thomas Schiff by using the coin, saying, heads, you get to keep your head. Tails, not so lucky. Just a little note, in case you guys have seen Ant-Man, the guy who plays Thomas Schiff, he's one of those 3 wombats, as Hank Pym calls them, which I always thought it was kind of cool. When I saw him in Ant-Man, I thought, yeah, Thomas Schiff! This is the work of gypsies. Sorry, I got all distracted. But then Batman shows up and stops the whole thing from happening. And he tells Harvey that he's going to turn himself in the next day when Harvey holds his press conference. And Harvey is not a fan of that, saying, you can't give in! And Rachel says the same thing to Bruce. You really think that's going to stop the Joker from killing people? And it's just a little nitpick, but it really kind of bugs me. It's like, guys, you really think the Joker's going to keep his word? He's not going to. Knowing the Joker, he's going to keep doing his thing if Batman turns himself in. But that's neither here nor there. And it plays into an earlier scene where Bruce was trying to stitch himself up from getting bitten by those dogs, when Alfred says, you have to know your limits, Master Wayne. Batman has no limits. Well, you do, sir. Well, can't afford to know them. At this point, after seeing all this killing happen and seeing that the Joker is not exactly who he thought he was, I wasn't prepared for this. Even though Alfred says, you have to, Master Wayne. Take it. They're gonna hate you for it, but that's the whole point of Batman.
He can make the choice that no one else can make. The right choice.
A little sidebar here. It's something that I've heard echoed throughout certain other movies, where a certain bad guy makes demands for the good guys to do whatever they want, otherwise innocent people are going to die. Classic old debate. I mean, obviously you don't negotiate with the bad guys, but if they're killing innocent people, it's kind of hard not to give in to their demands. But even then, they're probably not going to stay true to their word anyway. So during Harvey's press conference, tries to plead with the public, saying that, look, do we really think that this guy's going to keep his word? But nobody wants to hear it, so they continuously demand that Batman turns himself in. Bruce Wayne is there ready to make that move, but Harvey decides, you know what, take him into custody. I am the Batman. He does it in order to lure the Joker out of hiding, so that way the Batman can come in and take him down. And Rachel is not happy about this. She gives a letter to Alfred, which we later see is her deciding to marry Harvey and leaving Bruce for Harvey over him. It's at that point where I'm like, Rachel, come on. Come on. How else are they going to take the Joker down? You're really just going to let Bruce Wayne hand himself over on a silver platter? Come on. And Alfred, I think, says it perfectly. Perhaps both Bruce and Mr. Dent believe that Batman stands for something more important than the whims of a terrorist, Miss Dawes, even if everyone hates him for it. So Harvey's taken into custody. He's put into an armored car where the police convoy sets out to central booking. And they're lured into this underground tunnel where the Joker shows up in his big rig truck and tries to blow up the truck. And Batman shows up in his Batmobile in order to stop them. He manages to protect Harvey, but his Batmobile ends up getting severely damaged, and he ends up driving the famous Batpod. So Batman chases after the Joker and Harvey's convoy on his Batpod through the downtown area, and he manages to play a game of chicken with the Joker for a little bit. Again, continuing some of my favorite lines from the movie. Not just the cop saying, "What is that, a bazooka?"
Now there's a Batman. Oh, you want to play? Come on.
Here's a little funny story for you. Oh man. One time when I was watching this on DVD, I had my dog in the room with me. He was laying down quietly, just taking a nap, and I was getting really into the movie. I was actually quoting the Joker's lines. And when he said, "Ooh, you want to play? Come on," I said the line. My dog was off in the corner. He woke up. He heard me say this, and he went, "Hmm? Hmm?" And he gets up, runs right up to me, says, "Yeah, I want to play. I want to play." He goes up to the outside door, and I said, "What? No. I didn't mean that." Oh. And I had to get up and play with him because he got so ready to play. And I thought, oh, man, I should have kept my mouth shut. And now whenever I hear that line, I always think of my dog. I guarantee you, he's probably wagging his tail at me right now. But Batman manages to slide under the Joker's truck with these cables that he has tied to it, and he flips the truck over like this. And all of that apparently was a practical effect. This whole sequence is just about 100% practical, with probably a couple of CGI effects here and there. Which, I'm not against CGI, I know it has its place in film, but I really like the fact that Nolan is a very in-camera director, and this is one of the best practical effects that I've ever seen. To this day, it still makes my jaw drop. The Joker crawls out of the truck with his machine gun in his hands, and he's marching towards Batman, and Batman's coming at him on his Batpod, and he's firing all these random shots going, "Come on, I want you to do it, I want you to do it, come on!"
Come on, I want you to do it, I want you to do it. Come on, hit me. Come on, hit me. Come on, hit me.
It's one of those examples where the Joker sets up these scenarios for Batman to actually kill people in order to get out of a certain situation. He knows that Batman will never kill anybody, but he knows that the same rule might not apply to him, the Joker. And as Batman is flying towards him, he screams out in frustration like, "Ugh, this guy knows all my weaknesses." So he chickens out, and he slides right past him, and the Joker's just like, "Really?" And then later, the driver from the armored car that was holding Harvey shows up and points a gun at the Joker, taking him into custody, and reveals himself to be Commissioner Gordon, who's alive. And Harvey's safe and taken away into protective custody. The Joker's taken into custody, and then it's revealed that Harvey's missing. So Gordon questions the Joker on where Harvey is. "Me? I was right here. Who did you leave him with? Your people. Assuming, of course, they are still your people, and not Maroni's. What's the time? What difference does that make? Well, depending on the time, he may be in one spot or several." And he decides that, you know what? I'm not going to play this game with you. I need a cup of coffee. Ah, the good cop, bad cop routine? Not exactly. Turns on the light. Batman's in the room and starts smacking him around a little bit, demanding to know where Harvey is. And this scene is probably the best scene in the entire film. That is some of the best confrontational dialogue ever put to film. Batman is trying to get a handle on the Joker, and the Joker is just not playing into his game. He knows all the right buttons to push with Batman, and shows him that they are no different from each other. To them, you're just a freak. Like me. They need you right now. But when they don't, they'll cast you out. Like a leper. You see, their morals, their code. It's a bad joke. Dropped at the first sign of trouble. They're only as good as the world allows them to be.
See, I'm not a monster. I'm just ahead of the curve.
Then Batman gets frustrated and he holds him against the wall, trying to get the answers out of him, but then he says, "You only got minutes left, so you gotta have to play my little game if you want to save one of them." And Batman goes, What are you talking about, one of them? And he goes, you know, for a while there, I thought you really were Dent. The way you threw yourself after her. Meaning he's got Rachel, and Batman just flips out. And he blocks the door with a chair, and Gordon's trying to run into the room saying, oh, no. I know what's going to happen here. Don't do this. The Joker saw just how Batman was willing to save Rachel, so he thought, okay, I know exactly how to get him going. So Batman just punches him and smacks him into the window, trying everything he can to get the answer out of him, and the Joker's like, dude, you got nothing on me, man. Then he finally tells him where to go. Unbeknownst to Batman, he switches the addresses. He tells him Harvey's here and Rachel's here, so he goes after Rachel, thinking that he's going to be at the address that the Joker gave him. And then Gordon goes off to Harvey's supposed location. And then you see Harvey and Rachel talking to each other over this phone with a time clock winding down. And the Joker's just sitting calmly against the wall going, I want my phone call. I want it. I want my phone call. That's nice. I'm a 20-year man, and I know the difference between punks who need a little lesson in manners and the freaks like you who would just enjoy it.
And you killed 6 of my friends.
Still working against the clock, they're racing towards their locations. The Joker's just toying with that cop, especially when he talks about how he uses a knife instead of a gun. He can't savor all the little emotions. You see, in their last moments, people show you who they really are. So, in a way, I knew your friends better than you ever did. Would you like to know which of them were cowards? That gets the cop going, and then he somehow manages to overpower the cop and holds a piece of glass to the guy's neck, takes him out hostage into the detective squad area, and says, I just want my phone call. So they toss him a phone, he dials a number, and this one guy who's in the prison cell with the Joker earlier starts saying, I can't feel anything, I'm sick. The paramedics show up trying to take care of him, and they discover this bulging thing inside of his stomach, and then a phone goes off, like, is that a phone? And then the whole place blows up, killing those guys inside and knocking everybody else unconscious, and the Joker's just standing there like, well, my plan worked. So he goes off to the holding cells to take Mr. Lau out of the cell. Meanwhile, Batman and Gordon arrive at their corresponding locations. Batman breaks down the door and discovers that Harvey's there instead. And at that point, it's like, oh my god. The Joker switched the addresses on purpose because he knows that Batman would have gone to Rachel's location instead. He needs Harvey alive in order to achieve what he wants to do. Take the best of Gordon and Batman and bring him down to his level. And while Harvey was trying to escape, he fell over and knocked over a barrel of fuel and got half of his face covered. And so as Batman drags him out of there, the whole place blows up and the one half of Harvey's body catches on fire, which is what leads him to become Two-Face. Gordon shows up too late at the location, the whole place blows up, and he discovers that Rachel was inside and not Harvey. As I mentioned with the imagery in this movie with Batman standing on the edge of the building, this image of the Joker sticking his head out of the police car, just relishing in what he's done. My god. There are no words. And another great image that I like is Batman standing in the rubble of the building where Rachel was killed at. And he kneels down and finds this coin, the same coin that Harvey gave to Rachel when they last saw each other. With a voiceover of Rachel with her letter saying to Bruce that I'm going to marry Harvey Dent. But now I'm positive the day's not going to come where you no longer need Batman. And I'm going to keep talking about the imagery, but another scene that I like when you see Bruce Wayne in his batsuit, sitting in his chair, just emotionally shattered by what's happened, losing his childhood sweetheart without his mask on or his gloves, but he's got the rest of his batsuit on, trying to figure out if he himself is to blame for Rachel's death, for everything that's happened, with Alfred trying to comfort him. Expresses to Alfred she was going to wait for me. Harvey can never know. And Alfred was going to give him the letter, but he decides, you know what? I don't think it's right to tell him right now. Harvey discovers, with the coin right next to him that Batman left in the hospital room, that Rachel's gone. No sound, just music. Harvey's reaction. It's heartbreaking. It's one of the final things that pushes him over the edge. Now he's lost everything that matters most to him. And then you see what he looks like as Two-Face. And from what I understand, that was like a mocap/CGI effect. Looks great. Looks real. And then with the help of Sal Maroni, Gordon organizes a team to storm the Joker's hideout. But Coleman Reese, a lawyer who works for Wayne Enterprises, manages to discover that Batman is Bruce Wayne and tried to blackmail Bruce Wayne earlier. Whatever, I'm not exactly sure what was going on there. Even though Lucius says, your plan is to blackmail this person? Good luck. So he decides, after everything, to reveal Bruce's identity to the public on Mike Engel's talk show, but Mike Engel stalls him by taking phone calls from random viewers. And the Joker burns his half of the money with Mr. Lau sitting on top of that money pile. And the Russian mobster is just appalled.
This town deserves a better class of criminal. And I'm gonna give it to him.
It's not about money, it's about sending a message. Everything burns. So he calls Mike Engel's talk show and sets another ultimatum. If Coleman Reese isn't dead in the next 60 minutes, I'm gonna blow up a hospital in Gotham. So Gordon changes plans, sends his team to the TV station to get Coleman Reese into protective custody while a whole bunch of citizens are crowding around the station trying to take a shot off at Coleman Reese. Bruce goes out into his Lamborghini to follow them, trying to see any way that he can protect Coleman from getting killed. And the hospitals start to get evacuated, and the hospital that Harvey's at starts to get evacuated, and the Joker's there disguised as a nurse.
Hi.
But it's this scene right here where you finally understand why Joker's doing what he's doing. I'm a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do with one if I caught it. You know, I just do things. I'm sorry, but you plan to get caught by the cops, you plan to get Harvey Dent burned up like that, and you planted those bombs in the hospital, which I'm guessing took about a year or so of preparation. Sorry, but you are a man with a plan. But it shows you that people who are evil don't see themselves as evil. And then he says this line, if tomorrow I tell the press that like a gangbanger will get shot, or if a truckload of soldiers will be blown up, nobody panics, because it's all part of the plan.
But when I say that one little old mare will die, well, then everyone loses their minds.
And I still remember when I saw this in the theater, when he says that line, I went, yeah, that's true. It's sad, but he's right. He's not some guy just doing all this evil stuff just for the sake of it. He wants to expose the hypocrisy of society. He wants to show that people are just as bad as he is. He sets up all these scenarios where he exposes these people's weaknesses, and if he pushes just the right amount of buttons, that they don't have to go by the rules that society sets out for them there. It's not one of those things where you sympathize with the villain, but you understand why he's doing what he's doing, even though the way he's going about it is bad. He's killing people. Yeah, I agree that the society is a real messed up place, but I'm not going to go out killing people just to prove my point. But that's the Joker, so in this movie it works, I'm just saying. With that said, he finally pushes Harvey over the edge to make him seek revenge for Rachel's death, if the coin says that he can. So he lets Harvey get away, and the Joker blows up the hospital as he's walking out, and the scene where he's just kind of going as the hospital's blowing up behind him, and it stops for a second. And I like how that after he's pushing the button multiple times, the thing blows up and he's like, oh, here we go. Apparently that actually happened in real life, and he was just ad-libbing it as he went along. Like, what's going on? Like, oh, never mind. Meanwhile, Bruce Wayne manages to save Coleman Reese from that one guy in the big Dodge pickup that tries to run over the police car, and that one cop that Gordon was with tries to shoot him because his wife was in the hospital. And then because of that, Reese decides not to reveal Batman's identity after all, since he saw that he went out of his way to save him despite trying to reveal his identity to the public. Oh yeah, speaking of which, you know how people complain in The Dark Knight Rises with these plot holes that are supposedly there when they're not? There's a lot of stuff you can complain about with The Dark Knight. First of all, how did the Joker plant all these bombs in the hospital without anybody noticing? It would take like an army of men to rip all the dry rock and sheetrock off the walls, like running all these wires throughout these support columns. It'd take like so many months of preparation, and somebody would have had to have noticed. Like, you know how people out there try to theorize that there were bombs planted inside the World Trade Center for 9/11? That would have taken months and maybe a year or so of planning, and so many people would have had to come in and out, and that place like that that's that busy? Come on. You're telling me that not one person would have noticed that by now? That's just as much of a plot hole as supposedly, like, how did Bruce Wayne get back into Gotham City? Then again, you know, it doesn't bug me that much because the scene is still great, how the Joker walks away, go da, 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 da. But still, it's like, come on. You give the Dark Knight a pass for that, but you're giving the Dark Knight a bunch of crap for this? Come on. Come on. And it's a similar thing, like, how did the Joker get out of Bruce Wayne's penthouse after Batman dove out to save Rachel from the window? Would it have been nice to have some things like that cleared up? But they don't have that much of an impact to ruin the experience for me. Maybe it does for some people, but not for me. But afterwards, the Joker sets out another ultimatum that come nightfall, the city is mine, and if you don't want to be part of it, get out of the city right now. But the bridge and tunnel crew are in for a surprise. So the National Guard comes in to assist the situation, and Harvey Dent is going around looking for certain people like Detective Wirtz, Ramirez, Maroney, to get revenge for Rachel's death, if the coin says he can. He kills Wirtz, he spares Maroney but kills Maroney's driver, and then he spares Anna Ramirez's life when she says that the reason why she was in the mob's pocket, she was trying to support her mother's hospital bills. Even though Harvey is not wanting to hear it, he still decides, you know what, I'll cut you a break. I'll leave that to the justice system to decide what to do with you. And you really see just how low Harvey has fallen from the tree. Because you saw what he was capable of when he interrogated Thomas Schiff earlier. If anyone saw this, everything you did would have been undone. He was Gotham's White Knight, and now he's really bad. Killing mobsters is one thing, and corrupt cops, that's another thing, but when he tries to kill Commissioner Gordon's son, that is where I draw the line. That is not right. The citizens of Gotham and the prisoners get out on these two ferry boats, which is the Staten Island Ferry from New York City, just in case you guys don't know. You guys remember the Staten Island Ferry from Spider-Man Homecoming? Same kind of ship in this one. But anyway, the two ships. One's got the citizens, and the other one's got the prisoners. And the crew of each ship discovers bombs planted below, and they have detonators for their own bombs. And the Joker comes in over the intercom, telling them that you got until midnight until I blow you guys up. If, however, one of you presses the button, I'll let that boat live. So who's it gonna be? Harvey's most wanted scumbag collection, or the sweet and innocent civilians? You choose. And Batman and Lucius Fox manage to discover this with Batman's use of the sonar technology by spying on the entire city, which doesn't really sit well with Mr. Fox. And he says, as long as this machine is at Wayne Enterprises, I won't be. When you're finished, type in your name. I like seeing Alfred helping out Batman in his crime-fighting endeavors, but I really like seeing Lucius Fox helping Batman out in situations like this. So they manage to track the Joker's location to this nearby building overseeing the harbor, and the police show up, ready to storm the whole place, seeing guys in clown masks with certain firearms in their hands and supposed doctors and nurses being held hostage. Batman knows that something's not right, so he flies in, even though Gordon tells him not to. It's like, wait, we got clear shots! And you get the early version of the detective vision that you'd see in the Arkham series.
It's like clowns and hostages on 2 floors. The SWAT team on the stairwell.
And then you also get Morgan Freeman's voice, which, I mean, come on, it's the voice of God. I mean, who can argue with that? But as he's looking around and the cops are getting ready to storm the place, Gordon gets a call from his wife and discovers that she's being held hostage by Harvey. So Gordon leaves while the other cops are doing their thing, and Batman discovers that the guys in the clown masks are the actual hostages, and the doctors and nurses, they're the Joker's henchmen. He discovers this when he pulls off the mask of this one guy and it's revealed to be Mike Engel with tape over his mouth, and the clowns have duct tape all over their wrists holding the weapons. And he realizes that the cops are going to kill the wrong people. Could he have told them that, no, you're going to kill the wrong people? Well, the cops aren't going to listen to you at this point, so he decides to take drastic measures by working against the clock, doing everything he can to protect the hostages and fighting off the cops. The Batpod sequence is great, the scene in Hong Kong, that's amazing, and so is the fight scene in Penthouse and the bank heist scene, that's all well and good, but this just might be my favorite action scene in this entire film. And I'm going to quote this comment that I saw in this one video where it shows Batman fighting off a SWAT team, but this pretty much sums up my feelings on the scene itself. Shows him using his brain, thinking on the fly, saving people, taking down the bad guys, and trying to stop the Joker, and working against the clock. All with Lucius Fox's help. The way he manages to swarm in and knock the cops down while also fighting off the Joker's henchmen, setting up certain bombs in order to get the one set of SWAT guys on the previous floor on top to come down. Everything about this sequence I think is a perfect illustration of how Batman uses his intellect in order to protect the innocent. But then as Batman is fighting off this one cop, he's cornered by the other SWAT guys, and he knocks them off the building, not by killing them, but by just having them dangle off of this one rope. And then he takes off, confront the Joker for good. And then as the cops storm the rest of the building, they discover why Batman was doing all that, and they determine who are the hostages and who are the hostiles. So Batman confronts the Joker and they fight it out in a fist fight. And also on the boats, after the Joker sets up his ultimatum, the prisoners start panicking, trying to make the warden decide whether or not they should blow up the other boat. And the guards are trying to keep them under control. On the other boat, with the civilians, the National Guardsmen on board trying to keep them under control, they all start debating, we shouldn't have to die, those men had their chance. They're talking the exact same thing on the other boat. Let's put it to a vote. Most of the people agree to do it, but nobody has the stomach for it, and one of the crew members says, we're still here. That means they haven't killed us yet either. But the one businessman who was so dead set on blowing up the other boat, he decides, fine, nobody wants to get their hands dirty, I'll do it. But just when he's about to push the button, he stops. He freezes, he he looks around and he decides, you know what? I can't do it. It's not worth it. It's almost like they figured out, what if this is what the Joker wants us to do? He wants us to show that we're just as bad as him. And on the other boat with the prisoners, I don't know the actor's name, but I recognize him from The Fifth Element as the president or whatever. You don't want to die, but you don't know how to take a life. Give it to me. These men will kill you and take it anyway. So the warden decides to hand over the detonator, and the prisoner throws it out the window, saying, you know what? Screw the Joker. I'm not going to play his game either. So both sets of people on the boat are waiting for them to blow up. Midnight passes. Nothing happens. We really should stop this fighting, otherwise we'll miss the fireworks. There won't be any fireworks. And here we go. The Joker waits, but then he realizes that nothing's happening and he sees the clock. It's past midnight. They didn't fall for the plan. What were you trying to prove? That deep down, everyone's as ugly as you. You're alone. So Batman throws him off the ledge of the building. The Joker's laughing hysterically, saying, oh my god, I finally did it. I made him break his rule. But Batman catches him with his grappling hook and has him hanging there for the cops to come by. And he goes, you just couldn't let me go, could you?
This is what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object.
I think you and I are destined to do this forever. You'll be in a padded cell forever. Maybe we could share one. Oh, they'll be doubling up the rate this city's inhabitants are losing their minds. This city just showed you that it's full of people ready to believe in good. But then he tells him, you didn't think I'd risk losing the battle for Gotham's soul in a fistfight with you. You need an ace in the hole. Mine's Harvey. And this final time of seeing Heath Ledger as the Joker on screen, it's very bittersweet knowing that this was probably the last scene that he ever did in a movie. I know he did this other movie called The Imaginarium or something or other afterward, but knowing that this is his final full feature film, it's really sad. And, you know, it's really easy to get just lost in like the tragedy of his death before this movie came out. When you hear the stories about Heath Ledger and how he committed so hard to this character, like he stayed in a hotel room for a month all on his own and wrote a diary, trying to get the Joker's thoughts in order to try to get inside the Joker's head to understand the psyche of this character, that shows a lot of commitment, and Heath Ledger really, really sold it. And I think he very much deserved that Oscar that he got posthumously, because, like I said, that performance as the Joker is one of a kind. And the thing with the Joker, like I said, it's easy to think about the Joker with the Dark Knight, but the thing is, he's only in there for about maybe 43 minutes or so worth of screen time, but he's in there in just the right amount. And I think the best way to describe it in this review I saw from Richard Roper on the Ebert and Roper talk show from '08 is they put it like this with the Joker's screen time.
Is you don't overexploit a terrific villain. He's in the film just the right amount, and all the scenes really land, and they're kind of creepily funny, and a lot of it's really truly menacing, and the balance is perfect.
So that way everybody gets their moment to shine, and it's not all about the Joker, because that's another thing that I hear people complain about, is that it's all about the Joker in this one. Well, actually it's not. I mean, it's really about Batman and him trying to figure out, can he move on from being Batman when they manage to clean up the streets of Gotham. With the Joker, they do focus a lot on the Joker, but it's not the origin story or why he's the Joker like the Batman 1989 film. It's not the case in this one, because yes, the Joker is the catalyst of most of the stuff that goes down, but it's Batman's struggle with, can he move on from being Batman, and how does he try to get a handle on the Joker. It's something that I think a lot of people really misunderstand about this film, because like Chris Stuckman said, people tend to be very critical of what they see instead of thinking about what they're seeing. Batman later takes off to find Harvey, and he discovers them at the site where Rachel died. Gordon shows up and discovers that his family's being held hostage, and Harvey threatens to kill Gordon's son with tossing the coin. Batman shows up and tries to reason with him. Harvey refuses to listen. But Batman says, you know what, Harvey? You're the one pointing the gun, so point it at the people responsible. Fair enough. You first. Flips the coin, lands on the bad side, he shoots Batman. Flips the coin, lands on the good side, he spares himself. Then it comes to Gordon's son, and Gordon finally realizes that he should have listened to Harvey all along when Harvey tried to warn him, you really gonna trust your fellow cops? I investigated them internal affairs. I don't like this. Finally hits Gordon like, you know what? I should have listened to you. Don't punish my son, punish me. Harvey tosses the coin in the air, But Batman shows up and knocks Harvey over the ledge, and he manages to save his son. And this is the thing that a lot of people have talked about. Did Batman kill Harvey Dent intentionally, or was it an accident? This is a very, very hard thing to talk about, but I guess the best way I can describe it is this. First of all, Harvey said, "You think I want to escape from this? There is no escape from this." And if you're also going for a realistic tone, you're not going to last that long with a face like that without an infection killing you. So Harvey was probably going to die anyway with those wounds, with his tendons exposed like that, so you were kind of already doomed anyway. And Batman probably didn't want to take a chance of that coin landing on the bad side, so in an act of desperation, he did everything he could to save the boy. And if Harvey wanted to save himself, he could. I see it from the perspective of he was more focused on saving Gordon's son than trying to prevent Harvey from possibly killing the boy. People can say that he kind of bends the rules a little bit, and I know he did it in certain comics and iterations. He kind of bent the rules a little bit. His one rule that he won't kill people. But I don't really see it as him killing Harvey intentionally. I see it from the perspective of he was just trying to save the boy from being killed, possibly, if the coin was going to land on the bad side, which it didn't, but still. If I were Batman, I wouldn't want to take any chances of that happening. So he manages to save Gordon's son, and then Gordon laments about what's going to happen if this gets out. We bet it all on him. Harvey's prosecution, everything he's done, it's gone. The Joker took the best of us and tore him down. And Batman says, no. They can never know what he did. He decides that Batman should be the one to take the fall for Harvey's crimes. That way the Joker can't win. I kill those people. That's what I can be. No, you can't. You're not. I'm whatever Gotham needs me to be. Call it in. And I remember at the time when I first saw this, I thought, what? Batman really took the blame for killing all those people? I was not really happy with that ending, but over the years I've come to understand that ending, and I think it's actually probably the best way to end it. That movie, at least. So because of that, Gordon is forced to destroy the bat signal. Alfred is seen burning up Rachel's letter to Bruce. And Mr. Fox types in his name in that machine for the sonar software, and the machine self-destructs, and Mr. Fox has a little bit of a smile on his face, like, oh. So he knew that this was wrong. And at that point, he decides, you know what, I'm not going to resign. And during those scenes, you hear this voiceover of Batman saying, sometimes the truth isn't good enough. Sometimes the truth can be just as bad as lying. So in this case, probably best not to tell the truth. Which is later turned on its head in The Dark Knight Rises. Maybe we should stop trying to hide the truth and let it have its day. But that's the thing. There's so many different themes and messages you could take away from The Dark Knight. There's so much to it that's one of the things that I have a hard time talking about with The Dark Knight, because I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that I didn't even mention. I could go on for days talking about it, from Commissioner Gordon to Alfred, who I still think is played fantastically by Michael Caine. And another thing that I heard is that he gives nothing but speeches. Well, he has little dialogue exchanges with Bruce, and some really funny lines like, why don't you hire them and take the weekend off? Or, you can tell me the Russian for apply your own bloody suntan lotion. And even Eric Roberts, who plays Sal Maroni, I think is pretty good too as a mobster. Believe it or not, that's actually Julia Roberts' brother in real life. Who would have known that? I wouldn't have. All that aside though, there's so much to pull from The Dark Knight that I don't really know how else I could talk about it, but every time I watch it, it gets better with every viewing, and I always find something new to appreciate about it, or something that I didn't even notice. So Batman takes off on his Batpod as the cops are chasing him, and Gordon's son asks him, like, why did Batman take off? And Gordon says, because we have to chase him. He's the hero Gotham deserves, but not the one it needs right now. And as he's giving this monologue, the way Hans Zimmer's music cues up.
He's a silent guardian, a watchful protector, a dark knight.
Oh my god. So those are my thoughts on The Dark Knight. Despite some of my nitpicks with it, the hospital being wired with explosives, or Maggie Gyllenhaal as Rachel, everything about this movie, I think, for me, it's not a perfect movie, but it's perfect for me. The Dark Knight, yeah, I'm gonna say it. Not only is it one of my favorite all-time movies, I think it is one of the best films ever made. A modern classic. Yeah, I said it. Want to come at me? You go right ahead. But what are your guys' thoughts on The Dark Knight? Comment below and tell me what your thoughts are. I will see you guys next time, and happy anniversary to The Dark Knight.